Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Engage to Flourish podcast. This is Damon, and I want to welcome back a very special couple to me, Richard and Joanna Alberon. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks
Hello.
for
Yes.
So later on, we're going to have Joanna share a little bit more, because last time she was on, she just did a little bit, a sneak peek, but she agreed to come on this time and give a little bit more and share a little bit more about some of her testimony of coming to Catalyst and just some of the things that God's been teaching her. But before we get to that, there's something I don't think it's very well known, but Richard's small group actually had a service project recently, and I thought some of the things that they were doing were really cool, so I wanted to have him come on and share a little bit about the service project that his small group did, because I don't think a lot of people in our church know what they did. So, Richard, can you share a little bit about your small group service project?
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, first, can you share a little bit about how it got started?
Like as far as like just the
Whose idea was it? What'd you
okay.
guys?
Yeah. Well, when we were actually doing the
The serving challenge, right?
the serving challenge, we were coming, whereas it was drawing to a close, like we started to bring up our ideas for a service project, and Andy was the kind of the whole like vision behind it, you know, and she was not shy about it, and it kind of sparked an interest in my heart, because I was like, you know, I haven't did it in a while, because, you know, from our previous ministry, like we were really involved with a lot of the homeless and just outreaching and different things like that. So it was really neat, because it just, I was just flashbacking, like, you know, and it was pretty cool. So I really like enjoyed the vision, but to see it from Catalyst side of view, what it was something that it was kind of new, because they actually literally had to, you know, get some direction. Pastor Ross began to kind of just draw it in, and then he was like, well, let's do this instead. Let's talk about this. Like, you know, we need to, you know, it's going to be a project. So that's kind of just where it, you know, the side was about going out and reaching out to the homeless. So that's what the vision was. The other side of it was like she had a more vision behind the like longevity of it, like wanting to be out there more, be known, like Catalyst be known for, you know, having something out there so that they would know that we're there. But Catalyst wasn't ready for that kind of ministry yet. So it was going to become a project to where it was going to be a first time going out there and then being able to just, you know, provide service and then have something to give to them, you know, have a service to provide for them. So it ended up being really neat, because it kind of just fell into a place where we set up shop out there. And, well, let me go this way, because the way it ended up being was, okay, they wanted a place to go, and it was local. But they wanted to make sure, like, hey, we were, you know, following, like, you know, the laws out there, making sure, like, we weren't just kind of making a scene, make it difficult for people on the sidewalk and things like that. So, which was neat. And then having the resources to be able to give out. And they went about it and did all of that. You know, even had shirts, like, which was pretty cool. Like, her whole thing was, like, letting people know that we're there for them, that we're not just passerbyers, but hey, we're part of somebody or a ministry that's going to be out there to help you, you know. And then part of her vision was not just giving stuff out. Like, she didn't want people to just, here's a bottle of water, like, and have a nice day. You know, like in the Bible, it talks about, you know, hey, you know, they're thirsty and hungry. It says, go be filled, you know, it talks about that in James, right? So, you know, it wasn't like we wanted to be able to go out there and pray for people, you know, and then be sensitive to their needs. If we could provide a service to them, then what we could do is, you know, hey, you know, go out there and go pray for somebody, you know, try and have a word for them. Make sure, like, hey, if they need resources, we have that list of resources that we could give to them on top of some items that they might need, toothbrushes, things like that. So that's what the whole service project was. So it was actually kind of being a friend to those that didn't really have a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up being that. So that's kind of like what the whole vision was for the actual service project.
Yeah, I really love Andy's heart for people, and just the way that she's not shy about wanting to make sure that people feel supported, seen, heard, cared for, especially the people that, kind of our society looks down on or doesn't want to give a voice to, right? Or feels like people that might feel like they have no voice. And Andy really cares about making sure that those people are seen and heard. And that kind of ties into this past Sunday's message that Brett gave, right, about people being seen, known, and heard, right? And so this service project was an opportunity to let people in our community that generally don't feel that to know that God sees them.
Yeah, her whole thing was, though, because she goes, some of my neighbors, kind of where she lives, and she was saying, I don't know if it was specific her neighbors, but what she was saying was that how people were getting upset because some of the unhoused or homeless people that are around were kind of causing issues, but they were like, we got to get them out of there. But, they were kind of, complaining about them. And her whole heart was like, no, like, that's not how we should see them. And she was kind of like, she really brought a passion about it. And I thought that was really neat. And I was like, that's it right there. That's the heart that we should have, and it's like throughout the Word of God talks about, helping the homeless the way, he talks about, what is it in, I don't know. And what, Deuteronomy? I think it's in Deuteronomy. He starts to talk about, the gleaning policy that he had with those that were, that were wealthy, right? He goes, leave the corners and the outside for those who are the widows and the orphans, right? And the homeless, right? So that they could glean and have and be provided for. So it was like his way of being able to provide for them through the community. So it was like, and it's a good heart to have, and we know it's not particularly easy to deal with them, but it's pretty cool because that was her whole vision for it.
Yeah. And so you guys had a day where you guys went out and you reached out to the community and you guys were able to serve. Were there any people that you were able to get a chance to pray for, or do you have any stories about that, Richard?
I do, actually, because we actually, right when we got there, we kind of set up the canopy. We were right there in front of the CVS right there on Bellflower, right? So we were kind of just right there. And everyone kind of just showed up, and we, set up our table, set up all of the things, and right away, a gentleman comes walking up, man. And I turn around, and I was just like, hey, what's going on, man? And he's just like, hey, and I was like, hey, let me talk to you for a minute. So what it was is he was on his way to the hospital. He was on his way to the hospital right there, and everybody was still there. No one had left yet to go, walk around and try to find people. And they kind of got to see what that looks like because I wanted to draw information out of him so that they could see, because we wanted to be able to find more people so that we could give out the things that we had. So I kind of was just like, hey, kind of asking him, like, where are you staying at? Do you stay in the area? And he kind of gives me this vague answer, but he answered the question because they're real careful. They don't want to get in trouble because, hey, they're out on the street and they're not supposed to, especially, the area. So he's just like, I was like, so what are you doing? Where are you going? He's like, oh, I'm about to go to the hospital. I need to go to the hospital, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, and I kind of just start to just ask him if he needs prayer. Like, hey, let me pray for you. And he's like, no, I'm okay. He's like, but I'll take some water, though. And I was like, whatever you need. I was like, as a matter of fact, we have some more things for you. And if you need some resources for, your situation, we could give them to you. We could help you. He's like, well, I really don't have a phone. I was like, but when you get in contact with one, you call this place, And then he ended up coming back later after he got out of the hospital. And he had a little homeless sign and everything. He was kind of just there. And they were able to see just the kind of energy they need and just the willingness, to see it kind of in real time, so they got to see that right away. And then we went walking to be able to go and see, so it was really neat to be able to kind of just put that on display for them. And just like they were willing to just go out and do that, so, and then after that, we went on our first walk because Pastor Ross had went ahead of us. And then he ended up, we saw another, like, I don't know if it was a couple or another gentleman. They were kind of right there by, I think it was by the McDonald's or something like that. And they, wanted to pray for him. And, we just kind of left them there and we kind of just kept walking. And then, what's it called? What we did was we kind of waited for them to be finished and then they kind of caught up. Well, when we went by the McDonald's, we turned the corner, made a right on the McDonald's towards Target. And there was another gentleman was sitting on the floor. And he didn't respond like very well, but it was just being able to be available to him. He just wanted to be left alone, which, hey, it's perfectly fine. It's just, hey, as long as they, we're available to them, that's just, that's okay. They're going to say no, that they just want to be left alone. That's totally fine. You never want to hassle them, because they're already in a situation where they just, they're always kicked out everywhere they go. It's just hard, And so we kind of left, went walking again. And I don't want to say that it wasn't a good turnout, but it just wasn't the turnout that we expected. Because we wanted to be able to, talk to more people. I wanted them to be more active about it. So I guess that's what I was kind of expecting, because that's what I was used to, just being able to just, pray for them and be there and just kind of just be involved and stuff like that. But it was a good learning experience for them, which I thought, was a good place, because after we left the guy, one of the workers there was like, she was like, I feel like I'm not doing anything though. And I was like, that's not true. I was like, because I was like, you're part of this ministry. You're part of what's going on. Like your place is important. I was like, you may not be doing something that's physically, but I was like, what you could do is you can be interceding for the people that are receiving and the people that are ministering. So you're in a very important place because you might see something that nobody else sees. So you're going to intercede for that one thing that you see, or for the people that are ministering to and receiving. That's very important. That's a good place to be, So you can facilitate that ministry in that way. And she's like, oh, wow. She goes, I didn't even think about that. And I go, that's important. So if you're there, you have a place, and then it might be your turn. You might be in there and you might be able to, minister to somebody, so it was a good place to be able to teach that and be able to, kind of guide them through that. And we went a long walk right by the freeway and stuff. And then by the time we were into the ministry or the outreach, we had to pack up. It was like people had to go. It was around 4:00. And there was a guy at the Wendy's across the street. So me and Andy went. I was like, hey, just pack a bag and then we'll just go over there. Because they're all packing up. And I was like, we can go and, because me and Andy walked to the park to see if there was anybody there. And then, but on the way to the park, we saw the guy in the Wendy's and he was kind of just going off and the Wendy's going crazy. Like, it was just like, man, I was like, well, we'll go see what's up with him. So, on our way back, we went back to the table and to the canopy, and I told him, just pack a bag for us, a big bag, just pack a bag. And she's like, yeah, it's a good idea. So we would have packed a bag, and then we went back to the Wendy's, and we seen him. And, like, he was the most, like, I think the most rewarding time out being out there. Because he wasn't the person that was, like, the most expected. And I just... like, I don't remember his name, but I remember his response to us. And I go, hey, we were out here and we wanted to just come and talk to you for a minute. And we want to pray for you. And he just looked at us and his eyes got big and he just started just pouring out like just all of the things that he was going through. He was like, man, they always are taking my stuff. And he goes, man, everywhere I go, they throw me out. He goes, they call the cops on me and they try to beat me up. Like, he goes, no matter what I do. Those are his words. And with his story, he was telling us that he was kind of just hurt because it was like nobody wants to help him, you know? And of course, I would understand that he had, you know, some mental issues in there, you know, but he was competent enough to understand that we were there to help him. And I was like, I just want to pray for you. And I gave him a hug and I just laid hands on him and he stopped and he listened. And we prayed for him and then we gave him the bag of stuff. And dude, he just lit up like a Christmas tree. And for the first time, I think with him, that's what real help looked like. Somebody that heard him, you know, not just gave him stuff and then went about their day, but they intimately like looked at him and loved him, you know, and then we helped him, his big old suitcase, and helped him across the street, you know, and that was the end of our day. That was the end of it. But it was like we got to see Andy's vision come to pass. You know, and that was the service project that we had because it was like being on this side, I got to like show them what that looks like, you know, and then since then on, it was like God was beginning to just deal with my heart about ministering to people. So, you know, that's what the service project was. And that's how it turned out for us, you know, so it was good, and everybody was real attentive. Everybody was real willing, and you know, things like that. So it was neat. It was a good turnout. It was a good turnout and a learning experience too. So I really loved it.
Yeah, as a church, we are in a new season, and kind of like you said, as a church, we haven't done a lot of activities like that. We haven't done a lot of outreaches like that, reaching out to the homeless or things like that. And so, you know, we are in the season of stepping into being the city on a hill, and you know, that's making an impact in the community. And so with your small group taking on this serving challenge of reaching out to the homeless, it's like we are going to make a difference and an impact in the community. And so, yeah, it's neat how the Lord has brought people that have experience like you, Richard, that have experience doing some of that to help our people that don't have very much experience in that area to help show what this can look like. This is how we can minister to people and things like that.
Yeah. The other point though, too, is like, when I came back to Christ, like, you know, I don't know, 10 years ago, 13 years ago, like I was homeless, you know, I was on drugs and stuff like that. And the thing is, it's, you know, I was working at the Sam's Club. I was staying behind the store, you know, so I understand, like, I get it. Like, you know, I understand, like, you know, it was a hard place to be, you know, trying to function like, you know, but you're really not, because you're trying to get your mind right, you know, and you're trying to just survive where you're at, you know, your mindset is just, I just want to be okay. That's where you come from. And that's how these people see life. They're just trying to survive every day, you know, and some of them just gave up in life, you know, like nobody cares. That's their mindset. Nobody cares. So, you know, when Andy's vision was out there, I was just like, dude, that's great. You know, that's great. I was like, dude, that's a good place to start. You know, it's a good place to be. So, you know, that's my heart though. You know, and I like how Pastor Ross was talking about how he was like, he goes, I want our people to learn how to minister to everybody. And then their love is going to come out of that. You know, because they're going to start to love not just the unhoused or homeless, but he's like, if we learn how to minister to everybody as a whole, then those that want to minister to those that need more help than we can, which I thought was very wise, you know, because it's like you start to bring yourself into a place where, you know, you want to do something, but they got to want to do it. And I think that's a good place to start, you know, because if you learn how to minister to people, then it's not going to matter who they are or what their situation is. It's just they need Jesus, you know? So I thought that was very wise. So I like that.
yeah, I think in that way, it's like all of our needs are the same. We all need Jesus, right? And so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're, unhoused right now or if you're a millionaire living in a penthouse, like we all need Jesus, right?
Dude, and that's the foundation of it.
Mm.
That's the foundation of it. That's important.
All right. Well, thank you for helping to lead that service project. And, shout out to Andy. I know Sanjay's a regular listener, so shout out to Andy. Thank you for helping to broaden our vision as a church and what we can do in the community and serving the people around us and, being that city on a hill and, sharing your heart for people, especially the ones that, don't have a voice or feel like they're not seen or heard. And, Andy, we appreciate you and your heart and how you share that with us too. But we also have someone else that's in studio with us too. So it's not just the Richard Show today.
Come on now.
So I'm thankful. I've been asking Joanna to come share on the podcast because, in the times that we've had together, I just really appreciate her and, want her to know that here she has a voice too. So Joanna, welcome back to the podcast. And, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the things that, it's been a little bit now that you guys have been coming to Catalyst. What are some of the things that you feel like the Lord has been showing you in your time at Catalyst?
I would say love. Everybody loves you there, listens to you. It's nice. I love it. I don't know. I just enjoy being there. It's happy. It's welcoming. It's and I enjoy it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought for this episode that has been an encouragement to me is that as you guys have shared some of your story with me, I thought that sharing that with some of the people in our congregation that are listeners would be an encouragement, just to see that wherever you're at, that the Lord can redeem, the Lord can bring together, the Lord can, and the Lord hears you. And so earlier this week, Joanna was sharing a little bit about her story with the Lord and just some of the ways that she feels like the Lord has heard her, especially in the past, I guess, year and a half, right? And so I thought it would be awesome, Joanna, if you would be willing to share some of that story. And then, yeah, just some of the ways that the Lord has redeemed some of those situations and you felt heard from him. So why don't we start? Where were you at the beginning of last year personally? And just, I think you'd shared with me, like, just not like feeling like certain areas you were wanting to give up or let go of or things like that. So how about we start there?
Well, me and my husband were about to get a divorce. We were really we couldn't get along anymore. We were just having
just struggling, right?
Yeah, we were just struggling. We just couldn't even stand each other. We were just he was on his own, I was on my own. We just didn't talk. We didn't communicate. We were going through a lot. It was really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in 2024, 2025, a day or 2 days after New Year's, I went to church and I just got in my knees and I just cried out. I was like, I can't do it anymore. It was many years, maybe about 10 or 6, 7 years that I was just struggling. I wanted to get close, but I felt like I was not being seen or heard.
Mm-hmm.
I started changing too, so it was just too much. But in 2024 and 2025, I got on my knees and I cried out to God and I was like, I can't do it no more. I couldn't do it no more. I just couldn't. It was too much to bear, to carry. And he heard me. He did. He changed my husband. And he was listening to me. He was hearing me, and he apologized, and he cried out to me.
Richard, how was that season for you?
It was tough. It was a tough season. It was really hard because, as a Christian man, like, you know, you're really seeking the Lord to do everything you're supposed to. At least, you know, you think you're doing everything you're supposed to. You know, you're following instructions. You're getting up every day and you pray and you're hoping that, hey man, that, you know, God is happy with the way you're walking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then come to find out that you're not doing everything you're supposed to, or at least not the right way, or not doing the things that you thought you were doing. And something as simply as just listening. And that was the first time in my life where I was just broken, because I was like, dude, like, you know, she was going through a lot of things and it wasn't what I thought it was. You know, and for the first time, like, God's showing me, like, dude, like, you need to listen to her. You need to see her, you know. Just a little bit time before that, like, that was like my first real lesson from God about my marriage was, you're not her friend. You're not even her friend. Our relationship was kind of just growing without a friendship. You know, so I didn't treat her like a friend. I kind of treated her like she was like, you know, yeah, she was my spouse, but that's it. There's no intimate relationship there. And that's what was missing, because, you know, you're supposed to do this and I'm supposed to do that. But that's where it capped off. So I'm like, let me ask her to be my friend. And then begin to teach her about being my friend, you know, like, and then start treating her in a way that I care about the way she's feeling, caring about what she's, you know, going through, you know, listening to the hard things, you know, because I don't think I ever really did that. Well, God's supposed to do that, you know, and I was very wrong. So, and I think, like, that's where things begin to change. You know, God was changing my heart. He was changing my love for her. He was changing my love for ministry. He was changing my love for everything, because I was now seeing God lead me in the way that I needed to be, you know, and God did change my heart. God did answer her prayer, you know, and kind of from that moment on, like, we began to draw closer. Yeah, we still had our moments, of course, you know, because we're still kind of navigating through the whole, like, hard things that, you know, the place that we were at. So I kind of just, like, started slowing down and stepping back. And I think that that's where, like, I believe that God was like, now you're ready. Now you're ready. You know? And then God was going to be able to just kind of mend the relationship, you know? And then he was going to be in the center. You know, and he's going to be the tie that binds us together, you know, because we were in a really rocky spot. Like, we literally were like, we're done, you know, it's over. Like, you know, but my heart was like, I can't lose my family. I can't lose my family. Like, God, you said, your promises were, and I was just like, I guess I heard wrong. But that was not what God was doing.
So how was that for you, feeling like, okay, God, you said there's these promises, and then he says, but you got to change. How was that for you?
Because it was like, okay, I mean, it kind of just throws you off, because you're like, well, that's where you just kind of, you have that onset of humility. Especially as a man, because you're just like, bruh, you failed, you know? But it's a good place, because if you've given up, that's where God's going to begin to go, okay, now let me try. But I was okay with that because I couldn't do it anymore.
Mm.
I'm trying to hold my family together, you know? And I hadn't learned this yet, but when things finally came to fruition, though, it was like, when we finally came to Catalyst, that's when God just dropped the hammer. And he was like, you're holding on to something that doesn't belong to you. And I was like, mind blowing, like, dude, like, what the heck? Like, yeah, it's my responsibility to lead my family, but I can't save them. My job is to provide for them. Provide for them the leadership, provide for them the protection, provide for them the finances, provide for them the things that they need, and that's the place where I was like trying to do all that, but I'm forcing them to have a relationship with God when they're not ready for that yet, or allowing God to be in their life. Yes, they're there with me, but I'm doing it, not God. So I learned to step back, just like with my wife, like, kind of now it's like, oh my God, it's like night and day, it's like every day you get up and you just thank God because it's a tough place to be. But when you get through that season, you're just like, you're so grateful and you can't forget that experience because it's tough. Because you're going to be with this person for the rest of your life. Marriage is forever. And I never wanted to be away from her. I made a promise in my heart that, and I tell her all the time, I was like, look, I believe that you deserve, like, better, because in her life, I saw that a lot of the men in her life failed, or walked away or made mistakes and never came back or couldn't, I wanted to be different. When we got married, I was like, this is it. Like I told her, I was like, this is it. I'm never going to walk away. And I think that's the thing that kept us together, and it made me look at God and just let him do it. That's the commitment. So that's the beautiful part of it. Like it was a tough time, learning that, but I'm glad I went through it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I really wouldn't. It's tough. It's hard. It's hard, man. It's hard, but you thank God that you learned that though, because you see things different. You see it through God's eyes, And
you see her through God's eyes.
Man, I'm telling you, like, it's just like, dude, like and I love her so much. I love her so much. I get up in the morning and, make her coffee every morning, when she's not feeling well, be there for her and serve her food and make sure she's okay, take care of the kids, make sure like the house is clean. It may not be like the way she wants it, but it's making sure that, she's not worrying about nothing. She's not doing well. Her body's hurting. It's okay. I got you. I'm going to take care of the boys, take care of the house, go to the store, if I got to cook dinner, don't really want to do it, but I'm going to make sure I, do the best I can, and it's like, it's not out of duty. It's just because I just want her to be okay. That's my love for her,
So Joanna, as you saw Richard start to change, how did that change? What did that change inside of you, or how you felt, and how did you just receive that? Were you able to be like, oh, he's different. He's seeing me. Like, was it pretty quick, or what? Like, how did that go? How was that for you?
I was just thanking God. It was just a miracle, to see him, just to see him look at me and pay attention and hear me out. I don't know. It's just God. I don't know how to explain it. It's just, I trusted in him. It was just a hard situation where I was. It was. And just to see that, to be attentive and loving and kind and hear me, it was a big change. I didn't know how to, I just cry out and just thank God again, because it was different.
Mm. Did you notice it right away, or did it take a little bit of time before you noticed, or how was that?
It was right away. It was right away. It didn't even take like maybe a day or two. He was different. He was. And that's the miracle. I'm like, it was so fast from me crying out to him, but it was a real cry out.
So Richard, for you, was that just, I don't know, did God just Richard, did you hear audible voice and I was like, hey, bro, you need to change, or, right? Because, I mean, Joanna's saying this is a miracle. So what was that experience for you? Was it really
Well, it was just something that he showed me. It was just something that he showed me. In our last ministry, a lot of the situation was about relationships type, and when you give your trust to certain people, or you give your full trust, you trust them a lot, and you tend to be one-sided with that, because they're your leadership, or they're your friend, or and it's hard to see those things, but you're just like, that can't be right. But what's interesting about it, though, is when you start to see the other side, you're just like, hold the brakes. And it was just unmistakable, because you're just like, dude, you're like, I'm sorry. You're just like, man, I'm sorry. I didn't believe you. I'm sorry that, I didn't hear you out, and I was supposed to, because it's like, all you see as a man, all you see is what is being displayed in front of you. And you weren't really looking at the reason why those things are happening or not. It's like, you just kind of see the responses to certain things. So you're like, that's how you respond back. Instead of taking a step back and then evaluating it and just going, you know what? Let me wait. So instead of just dismissing things, it was like, let me talk to her more about it. Let me ask her what happened. And then I started to hear it. When God showed me, then I started to hear the hurt. Then I started to hear the reasons why she was feeling certain ways. Then I began to see, and then God was like, look, this is what you need to do. And then I began to respond in a way where it was like, and then it was just like, now she was finally feeling a breakthrough. So it was like God was beginning to use the situation to mend our hearts, because it was just a bunch of pain. It was just a bunch of just a bunch of conflict, and it kind of hurts that way. But I was okay with it, because it was like God was showing me how to be a good husband. God was showing me how to love my friend, who really felt really alone. And the person that she was supposed to trust the most, she didn't trust anymore, that was going to hear her. And that was where I failed. So that's what was really important, because it was like, yeah, it was like God showed me it was a major change. It was a major change, and it needed to change fast, because we were going downhill with no brakes. You know what I mean? And it was no way of recovery, and God was like, it's time now, and now more I think about it, it was like God was more audible than I thought he was. And he does it in such a way where you're going to see what you're hearing. So he was confirming everything to me, and it was loud and clear. Like I was kind of blown away because of the way he was showing me. And I didn't realize I was causing that much damage. Even though I'm a Christian man, air quotes, you know what I'm saying? So that's the thing is it's like, and it's easy for us men to do that sometimes, I believe, me being the master at dismissing stuff, because I'm right, because I feel like, hey, I'm doing the right thing, but not doing it the right way. And I think like that's where God changed my heart. He turned my heart inside out. And then from that relationship, it was like, it was spilling over into my children because they seen us every day, and you don't realize like, dude, you're starting to just damage your children because your relationship is not where it needs to be, So that's where that wisdom comes in. It begins to fall in place, and God begins to lead you in a place where that's where it has to be right away because it's the right time. You know what I mean? It's the right time. God never intends us to go through those things, but God's going to use the time to be able to change those things that need to be changed.
Yeah. So, I mean, Joanna, when you first shared some of these things with me, I was like, I would never have known, because I've only known you guys since you guys came to Catalyst, right? And this is after some of these changes were made. And so when you were sharing these things with me, I was like, whoa, there has been some transformation that the Lord has done in your marriage, in your friendship, and so that's one of the reasons that I wanted you to be able to share this, just to praise God the way that he was able to perform this miracle, but then to also to encourage people that, we don't know what other people's relationships are like. We see people on Sunday once a week or, maybe a couple of times, but we don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
It's easy to put on a show.
Yeah.
Not that they are.
Yeah.
But it's just Sunday best. It's just Sunday best. It's just the kind of the church culture. Like, you kind of just come and you're going to hear from God and hopefully they leave changed. But like you said, like it's just, the reality is like you don't know what they're going through.
Yeah. And so I wanted this testimony to be an encouragement to people that wherever you're at, whether it's within a marriage, within any relationship, or just even personally, like the Lord hears you, the Lord sees you, and he's working. And sometimes it'll be a quick turnaround, like in this situation. Sometimes it'll just take time, but not to lose hope. But the Lord can turn things around, right? And so, in your guys' situation, the Lord did make a big change. And sometimes I feel like that's where it can be difficult too, is we recognize there needs to be a change, but then in relationships, it's always, right, the other person needs to change, right?
Yeah.
And so like for Richard to be able to say like, oh, the relationship needs to change, but I'm the one that needs to change, right? That's hard for a lot of people to be able to recognize that and to be able to say, yeah, I'm the one that needs to change. And so, Richard, thank you for like being that testimony for people that sometimes we might need to look at ourselves and say, I need to be willing to change for this whole thing to change.
Yeah, it is hard, but sometimes God will allow things to get worse so that we could see things for what they are.
I think sometimes it's like a teaching lesson, so you get mature and see things in a different way too.
Yeah.
Definitely, because it allowed me to see my family through a different perspective, and sometimes as a leader, what does the Bible call us? The priest of our home, and just because you think it because you're going to church, it's not enough. It's really not. It's really not enough. You're in a good place. That's a good starting point because you're going to be able to lay everything down. But like we need to lead our families in a way where we're leading them to God, and sometimes as a leader, you're going to have to lay some things down, and it might not be easy, but dude, once you get there, God will help you get it, And then it just gets easier because it's just like, you're just like, dude, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about that. Like, God's going to take care of it.
Yeah, one thing I liked that you said was, I might have been doing the right things, but I wasn't doing it the right way, right? Because I think sometimes in our society and just the way that the world works, it's like just do the right thing. It doesn't matter how you do it, right? Like you can go for the big bucks, and you can treat everyone like dirt, and it's okay, right? Because your end goal was right.
Yeah.
But in your situation, I think that highlights like a bigger truth, right? How you do things is important, not just what you do.
Trust. Yeah. Yeah. It does matter. It really does. It really does, because people do read between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. So, Joanna, is there anything else you'd like to share about just some of the things that the Lord might have been doing recently, or?
Well, there's a lot of stuff he's doing. Still, I'm seeing him. He's, I'm learning too, because I was never really like close to church or like helped. I tried many times, but I guess I just didn't grow in that church. But in this church, I'm seeing I am growing. I'm learning. Sometimes I feel like I'm not capable of, or I'm not right, But it's God showing me. I can see it, and I'm growing.
Yeah,
I never done like a Bible study, so they're
I
trying to provide.
I was just gonna go there too.
So they were asking me to do like a Bible study at our apartment building where we're at right now. I never done one. I never participated in one. So this is new to me. So I'm still learning. I'm struggling with it too. So like I never done it before. So I don't know if I'm like, I feel like I'm not the right person to do it, but it seems like it is somehow. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's what happens, right? The Lord sees you. The Lord doesn't just see what you do, but the Lord sees your heart, right? And your heart in this season is like, I want to get closer to the Lord, and I want to grow. And so he's stretching you in some of these situations. Like, I've never done that before. I've never done that. But that's how you grow, right? If we continue to do the same thing over and over again, we're going to stay the same. But sometimes in order for us to grow, we got to, if we're working out, we got to lift heavier weights. We got to try something different, right? And so in this situation, it's like, this is a new season. Like, the Lord's saying, Joanna, I see you. These people see you. You're hungry for the word. Lead this Bible study. And in that, you're going to grow a lot too, right? And so, I feel like it's cool to see just in your story, that's what this past Sunday's message was about, right? Is how the Lord sees, knows, and hears us, right? And I feel like this testimony and even what you're sharing now, it's like recognizing the ways that the Lord has seen, known, and hears you. And he knows there's a lot more in there. And so he's pulling it out now, right? Like, Joanna, you're someone that loves his word and you want to grow. So I'm going to bring these people alongside you to walk with you and say, hey, lead us, teach us how to study the Bible. So we'll study the Bible together. And, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was a really interesting kind of starting point, because when we first moved to the building that we're at, or the apartment we're at, we were just excited just to have a new apartment, man. We were just really excited.
That's another miracle too.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. It was just like, because it was bad. But
we were in a tiny, tiny home.
Yeah, we were in this 1-bedroom apartment. There's 5 of us. We're just kind of like, it was kind of bad because, we're just kind of shoved in there. We kind of outgrew it, and it was just like roaches and mice. It was just bad. It was just like, because we had been there for almost 8 years. So we were there for so long, so we were there before Julie was little, and then Jacob and Richard were born.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of just outgrew the place, and we were trying to find a new place and stuff. So we finally moved over, and we got approved for the place. So we moved in, and we were kind of thinking in our heart, we were like, well, man, maybe we can like try to help some of the people here in this building, because we just know it's a low income building.
Mm-hmm.
So we're, our heart was to just try to like, be able to speak to some people, like, kind of invite them to church, try to get in there, and then try to have a different heart about it, So she ends up meeting this lady named Yolanda.
You don't need to say names.
Well, anyway, she's one of our neighbors. She's like
Yeah.
one of our neighbors, and she real nice lady, like real nice. And she they were going into some financial like kind of
Budgeting.
yeah, but I kind of like a budgeting class. Like they kind of help you facilitate some of that, and then they'll help you learn some ways to just kind of
Manage your money.
yeah, money management, just some good habits, things like that. How to follow through and stuff like that. So it was really good. So they were kind of going to the class together, and then they just ended up just talking about Jesus. Like come to find out that our neighbor was. She's Christian. She's a believer. She goes to another church, but, she was needing some help, and Joanna saw it and became her friend, and come to find out she just needed someone there to help her.
I needed someone too.
So it was really neat, like to see them kind of just come together, and then they're just reading the Bible. They're just talking, praying, like just, being together. Like now we're just friends, and it's really neat because, they ended up just proposing to her. One of the human resources guy suggested Joanna, like, why don't you guys kind of just start a Bible study or something? And they were kind of like, are you for real? And they didn't want to advertise it, but they want to put it out there so that other people in there, that if they need help or they just need friends, like they could come, and it's a godly space, and they're not going to stop them. So it's a good starting point for us to be able to start to minister to those people. And Joanna is going to be the start of that. And her testimony is, she really didn't go to church a lot after a while. And to see her heart come out and just want to be in church all the time. If I wasn't feeling good, she's like, I'm going. I want to be there. I want to talk to everybody. I want to, I want to go to Mahjong night. I want to do this and I want to do that. And, it's like, dude, like she has the heart that I have now. I want to be in God's house. To me, like that was my prayer all the time. Like, dude, I just want her to want to be with God. And now that's all she does. That's all she wants to do. So to me, that's my answer prayer. Her heart for God. And she was telling me how, like, tell her what you were saying about the morning, like about being baptized.
Oh, I think
yeah.
you mentioned me.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
Like
So
he was gonna mention to Pastor.
yeah, so okay, so for everyone listening too, there will be a baptism coming up. We try to do one, at least one a year, and we do it in the ocean. So they're trying to plan. A lot of times we plan it too late or last minute, so then it gets into like when it's cold. so we're trying to plan it a little bit earlier this year so that hopefully it's not as cold. But there will be a baptism coming up. But yeah, that was something that was awesome. When I was talking to Joanna the other day, she had mentioned that she hasn't been baptized yet, and you want to share a little bit about that, Joanna?
I don't know what to say. Well, I really never have. I never wanted to at the beginning because I was struggling, So I was just not okay with it at the beginning, but I was like, now I do. And then when I mentioned it to you, you're like, we're going to have a Bible baptism soon. So I was super happy and excited. I was like, oh, I want to do it now. Now I want to do it. I was like, I was waiting for somebody to say something. And I just mentioned it and you just right away told me. And I was like, I think God heard me.
Yeah. I think God hears you all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just as the more we talk, it's like, yeah, Joanna, your story is like the Lord hears you. Even when other people, it feels like other people are not hearing you, like the Lord does, and he sees your heart. And yeah, it's cool to see where you're at now and the way that your heart has turned to, because I know that there have been times in your life where you felt like there was hurt in the church, right? And it was legit. It was legitimate that you felt hurt by people in the church. And there were times where you felt, people in the church and leadership didn't hear you, didn't see you, didn't value you. But throughout all of that, the Lord did.
Yeah.
The Lord did. Right? And so it's cool to see now that you've been able to experience that with the Lord, and how that's changed just even your desire to be at church, and how you want to be in God's house, and you want to be around God's people, where I know that something you've shared with me in the past is that there were times where you just didn't even want to be around church people at all.
I didn't. I didn't want to go to church no more. I was done.
Yeah, and that can be the case for a lot of people, right? And a lot of people that are anti-God, it's because of hurts that they've experienced from church people, right? And the people that are supposed to be representing God are not representing him in a way that is drawing them to him, but it's actually turning people away because they're representing God in a way that makes people feel unseen or unheard or unloved or uncared for. And that's not how we feel God treats us.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's why it's so significant, this message that Brett shared this past Sunday, is because, there are a lot of people out there that feel like God doesn't hear them, doesn't see them, doesn't know them, and that's why they turn away. But that's where we as a church want to be the type of people that help others in the community, whether it's like with the homeless, like the service project that you guys had, or just the people in our congregation, or the people that we run into everywhere we go, because, people that go to work, people that go to school, people that are, they can be, we can be God's ambassadors in that sense. We can help people to know that God hears them, God sees them, God knows them, God cares for them, right? Wherever we go, we can do that, and instead of turning people away from church because of the hurts, they'll be like, no, this is the place I want to be, because I want to be where God is, because he hears me, he sees me, he knows me. And so it's been cool to see in your story, Joanna, just, like how you've been experiencing that. And now all these things that were going one direction have totally turned around and are going in a different direction. And now the excitement that you have when you talk about getting baptized, like, that's awesome. That's awesome. Reminds me of the eunuch, right? It's like, can I just do it now?
Yeah,
just the excitement, right?
He's like, what is stopping us?
Right? Yeah. So when I shared with you that we're planning on, our church is planning on having one soon, like your face lit up, and I was like, oh, she's excited about this, right? And so it's cool to see.
Yeah, it blessed my heart a lot, man. I was just like, this is crazy. Like, God's not telling you, like, so it's pretty neat.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really good too, is to recognize, like, as good as things are, God's not done, right? God's not done. And so, I think sometimes that can be enough for us, right? It's like, oh, it's not as bad as it used to be, so we're okay. But it's like, no, God wants more for you. Like, that's why in the Bible he talks about glory to glory, right? It's like one level of glory we can experience now, but that's not the end. He wants us to experience a whole another level of glory, right? And so to recognize, like, things are different, things are better, but it's like, oh, there's actually more that he has in store for us. So don't lose hope. Continue to have hope that there's even more.
Yeah, the picture comes to mind too is like, we used to hear it or see this a lot. Even like people talk about like how they just try to put God in a box, because we'll think like, oh, okay, yeah, he answered my prayer, but we don't know exactly what he had in mind for that. And it's so much more better than what we thought it was going to be. I never knew what it was going to look like, for her heart being for God, and I kind of just thought like it's enough for her just to want to go to church. God's like, nah, man. Watch. and then he birthed fire in her heart, her desire is to want to have friends again. Her desire is to, want to serve in church.
Mm-hmm.
That was my prayer for everything. I was like, dude, why can't she just do what I want to do? Why can't we do it together? Like, I literally would tell God that, like, dude, what is going on? Like, and to see her now, like I don't have anything to say. I'm just watching, and I'm just like, dude, I'm so excited. Just so excited, And then on top of that, God is like speaking to my heart too, As he's doing that, like I'm seeing God like kind of just like, come on, walk with me. He's beginning to show me what this looks like, And we're a couple that's starting to walk with the Lord together, So I think that's beautiful. It's so cool, man. Like, God's doing a lot for us. So he deserves all the glory, man. Yeah, right on.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things that you'd shared with me earlier, Richard, is just one of the ways that the Lord has been speaking to you is, we all know you like to talk, but the Lord has been speaking to you, hey, it's time to start listening. So can you share a little bit about that? Because I know that that's been something that you've been learning in your interactions with other people, because you've shared that, one of the things like with the service projects, you want to minister to people where you go, and sometimes the Lord's been saying, yeah, you just got to listen.
Some time back, though, because I used to always watch, I don't know if those that are listening, you guys ever watch people online or on YouTube, and they're out there like, preaching to people, and they're ministering to people, and like, they'll be laying hands on people, and I'm just like, man, I want to do that, but I am terrified. And part of that was because I'm like, dude, I'm afraid of rejection. Like, and it's an easy place to say that, because you're just like, dude, I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to argue with them. I don't want to, like, but that you're supposed to. Right. So that's kind of just where it stops. And since the Service Project, like, and when I came to Catalyst, because again, in our previous ministry, like, I was supposed to be an outreach leader at that time. And I ended up walking away from it. I was terrified. And that was like right at the time when God had brought Joanna back into my life. And it was right before we got married. And I was supposed to wait, but I didn't. So so I ended up kind of just walking away from the ministry, and he never asked me again after that. So I kind of just left it, and I was like, okay, I ain't going. I was kind of like, I'm okay. So when we came to Catalyst, like, part of the thing was just like, God was kind of showing me, like, I don't see anybody like I heard about them going to the mall or talking to people, ministering to people, and then being able to see Catalyst function the way we function, the love of the church, the gifts in the Spirit, like the things that we do, and just in service to each other and to those that are new. Like, it's uncanny to me. And to see the church function the way it's supposed to. I really believe that with all my heart, right? And then when you see that, you're like, we need to take that out. So God begins to show me, like, what that looks like. So when we did the Service Project, like, I was like, I want to do more. And I know on past times I came on the podcast, I was talking about, like, God wants me to do something, right? And I'm not shy about it, because I'm like, the more I start to think about it, the more, like, God is pointing towards that. He's pointing towards it. He's talking to my heart. He's showing me in Scripture. He's he's not being shy about teaching me how to walk this walk. So I'm beginning to understand, like, what it really is in the Word of God when you preach to people, like what you're beginning to see, right? So as a person who likes to talk, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, you want to be the one to be able to minister to people, and then you're like, okay, God, I want you to touch them. But God is kind of showing me in a different way. So in the past week, or last week, actually, I'll go back one more week. I'll go back another week. And what it was is, first, God showed me in 1 Corinthians, like, he began to because I've been kind of just doing a daily study, like kind of just reading here and there. And then it was just like Paul was kind of just talking to the Corinthian church about how he began to minister to them, right? Through humility, right? And that was like the first starting point right there. I was kind of just blown away because he's showing me how your heart posture is when you go and talk to people, right? First, he goes in humility, right? And I didn't try to come with eloquence of speech. So that's how he spoke to them. He didn't come to them with the high mind, right? So his heart posture was through humility, right? He's not higher than them, right? But he's on their level, right? If not, then he was like, he presented himself to them like, hey, I'm just like you, right? If not, like he could have been, he was the
Pharisee of all Pharisees.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? And he was zealous for the things of God, but again, he was doing the right thing, but the wrong way, right? He's persecuting the church, right? So the whole thing is, anyway, it was how he presented himself to the people. So God's showing me how to, hey, this is the heart you should have. Have a humble heart, and it's not just talking to people, or coming to them in a way where, you're the expected one to do something, I guess you want to say. So, I'm like, okay, God, like, I get it. And the message of the cross. So one is humility, right? And then the other one is the message of the cross, right? Salvation. And God's kind of pointing out these three areas, and I'm just like kind of blown away. I was just like, dude, like God's actually showing me. I even told Joanna, like we were up in bed and I was showing her what I was reading, and I was telling her like, I never read this like this before. Like I'm understanding, like, cause we know, hey, we're not supposed to be prideful, like all those things. Right. So, and then a week later, God kind of brings it in. Like now he's going to show me what it physically looks like. Right. So hindsight, where I'm taking the boys to go get their haircuts. Like we always get our haircuts every couple of weeks, right? So kind of just me, Julie, and the boys stop by Smart and Final, and this lady comes up, and she's asking for donations. And to me, it's a pretty common thing for our area because we have a lot of people doing funerals. They're always asking for donations, like and a lot of the ministries, that's how they support their ministry, for these recovery homes and stuff like that. So, right away, I'm like ready to just be like, nah, I'm good. Like I gotta go. Like the boys are in the car because I had to like, Julie's still in the store and I had to, Jacob was kind of like, giving me a hard time. So I was like, I'll just go take him to the cars. I was like, Julie, just go ahead and pay for the stuff. So I gave her the money and she comes walking up and I'm ready to just kind of brush it off. And God's like, no, listen to her. And I was like, all right. And I asked her, I was like, hey, how long you been in there? Like, how long you been in that home? And she's like, for 14 months. And it brought back a whole bunch of like memories, because I've done that a couple of times. And she begins to tell me about her story, about how she was a manager at IHOP and that she was an alcoholic and that how she almost died. And I was just like, kind of like, oh my God, like, dang, this is crazy. Like, And then after hearing her story, God's like, pray for her. Begin to pray for her. And then God began to have a word for her at the same time. And I never really experienced it like this before. So after hearing her story, like, her kids are kind of older, but she's like, I'm longing for my children. But I know I'm not supposed to leave yet. So God confirms that. God's like, stay where you are because the time will come where you're going to be with them. You just need to wait. And God began to minister to her. So I laid hands on her. I prayed for her. Just gave her a hug. And that was the end of it. Like, that was the end of it. But it was, and then like Julie comes running out, and then I just kind of give her a couple dollars. And that was the end of the interaction. But it was like, being like God showing me like, hey, like, take your time and listen.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to listen to talk. Like, just listen to them, and God's going to do the rest, So we go get our haircuts, and then after that, like, we go in, and Jonah wants me to go to the store, so I was like, I got to go get a couple of things from the store, and by this time, we come out of the store, and there's another gentleman there. Same day, just different times, so the boys are already in the car, and Julie's in the passenger seat, So Julie comes running out. I start talking to the guy. He pulls out a book, and he starts talking to me about the Passover. He starts talking to me about, and I was just like ready to kind of just start to like, give him the word of God, like start to just, and God's like, no. Hear him out. Like, listen to him. So again, like same situation, but different. And I'm like, but thinking, I'm kind of like, in my heart, I'm kind of like, dude, like, but he's wrong. Like, but he's wrong. Like, he's leading off in a way that just doesn't sound right to me. But God's like, no, just like listen to him. Listen to what he has to say. So I'm like, okay, well, tell me about it. So he opens up his book and he says, well, we're in the last days. And I go, that's true. We are. We're in a season right now where things are going to get bad. And he starts to draw off into this place where it's about the Passover, and he's like, salvation is tied to that, and he's right, but something's wrong. He's missing a part of that, and something comes to mind. And I'm like, let me ask him something. I go, have you read the story where Jesus talked to Nicodemus? And I was like, how does that correlate to this, to what it is that you're telling me? And he couldn't answer it. He didn't know how to do that. And it wasn't a point where like I got something over you. Now I want you to hear what I got to say. It wasn't even like that. It was like my heart was just, he's missing something. He's almost there, but not yet. And if he could understand this conversation that Jesus had with Nicodemus, then he's going to understand what he's talking about. And it's that simple. And he couldn't answer that. And I was like, look, go back and read that story. And I'll see you again. And you'll understand. Because without this, you're not going to understand that. It's very, very important. Because he's talking about a time when Jesus was going to die. Right? And he said, do this in remembrance of me. So it was like, that was the end of our conversation. And God began to just like, show me what this looks like. And I'm like, man. And then so I got home. And the next day, I'm like spending my time with God. Like, I'm just kind of like, okay, God, like, what are you showing me? And he's like, what do they all have in common? And I'm like you said, like, do they need Jesus? Like, is it just that, like that, like, that's not wrong. But the one thing he showed me, he says they didn't look like they need God. None of them look like that. In both situations, they didn't look like they needed God. He didn't look homeless. He didn't look like, he was struggling. It was just, he was out there ministering. The other lady had God. This guy too, at some point, and it's just like, God's like, it's not what they look like. It's when you get involved and you hear what they have to say, then you're going to hear their heart. And then when you listen, then you're going to allow the Holy Spirit to come in and start to minister to these people. Then God was able to use me to speak to them, right? Then he was able, and the word of God starts to flow, right? So that's where God was showing me how to listen. God's like, no. Don't be in such a hurry. So that's kind of like what God was like teaching me. And it's so vivid. And it wasn't all like, oh, it's a great lesson, like all in one moment and one day. But it was like God was taking pieces here, pieces there. And then he was like, look, I'm going to go out and show you what this looks like. So that's kind of how that, God began to minister my heart lately. So it's been really neat to see God like kind of just start to invest in the heart, you know, and to kind of show me. It's kind of wild because it's like you always think about God's will for your life. At least a lot of us believers do, right? You know, those are listening. You guys ever think about what God's, you know, what God's talking about, you know, and to be able to see God actually doing it is really superb. Like, it's really neat, you know? So that's just kind of been my experience with it, you know? So it's not that I, you know, already know and that I'm equipped to do it. It's God equipping me to do it. And I think that's where the draw line is, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting too, because a lot of times when we think of ministry or reaching out or like going out to places, we think I need to have the right things to say, right? But one of the things that you're learning and one of the things that these experiences have shown is like it's not necessarily about having the right things to say. It's sometimes it's just I need to listen, and then God will show me what to say, right? And so you know that gives an opportunity for the Holy Spirit to do His work, because a lot of times people, when we come at them with, okay, you have to do this, or you have to think this, or you have to believe this, right? It's like the defenses are up.
Yeah.
But when people are able to share, then that kind of puts their defenses down. It leaves them in a space where they're more open. And then that's when the Holy Spirit can come in and really speak to them and minister to them. And I think it's cool because it's not just like these situations, but even just seeing how that played out like between you and Joanna, right? It was like when you started to listen to her, when you started to hear her and really see like what's going on, right? Then she was able to, okay, I can trust him a little bit more. I can see, and then how that has shifted and changed your guys' relationship too. It's opened things up to allow God and the Holy Spirit to work in those places, because the defenses come down and people feel heard and people feel seen. And it's like, oh, I can receive now. Where before it's like, wait, nope.
You put walls.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It creates a lot of walls. Yeah, because I think that's how our society kind of is now. You know, we speak to, you know, or we listen to respond. You know, and I think that's kind of like, I first learned that from my brother. You know, and he was saying that a lot of people do that just out of habit. And it may not even be on purpose, but we'll listen so that we could speak. You know, and that's not God's intention. That's not how God operates. You know, God is always listening to us. You know, He always hears us. You know, and sometimes it may feel like, you know, God's not going to do anything about it. But in reality, we don't know until we start listening. You know, so I think like sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow. Sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow because you're just like, dude, because, you know, you want to do things right away. You want to be, how do you say it? Like you want to be useful. You want to be like, man, like I want to be used by God. Like, you know, hang on, Sunday I was talking to somebody, they were saying that how they wanted to experience the Holy Spirit in a new way, you know, and the thing is, I think it's a great desire. It's a great desire. And then what they told me was God was speaking to them and showing them around the sanctuary how God was moving. And I was like, dude, that's crazy. That's so cool, because it's like God, he's not being quiet about it. He's showing us that He is there. He's moving, right? And it was a good lesson to learn. And it's from an older believer, like telling me about what their desire is. You know, they've heard about past experiences or things that, you know, the Holy Spirit moving, but they're like, I want to experience that. And God's like, okay, let me show you what that looks like first. But for them to be able to hear that and then to just know, like, dude, that's God answering them is like mind blowing, you know? So like, that's a good place to be. You know, God will put that desire in your heart, and then He's going to show you, right? And then He's going to teach you, you know, or vice versa. He's going to teach you, and then He's going to show you what it looks like, you know? And that's like, dude, that's dude, it's great, man. Like, you know, because you're learning a lot, you know, and God's so simple. You know? So that's just kind of how, like, God's been really talking to my heart and showing me, like, about the things that he's getting me ready to do, you know. And the last time my brother was on there, on here, he was telling me about how he was saying that he was always chasing his destiny. And he said it was like the Joker. Like, he didn't know like what it would be like if he actually caught it. If, you know, the Joker actually caught a car, you know what I mean? I wouldn't know what to do with it if I actually caught a car, you know? And it's like that, because you're always hoping. You're just like, I want to do something for God. Like, I want, you know, you read about it in the Word of God. You read about it and you see people doing the things for God, and, you know, and you don't really see the things that they go through to get there. But in that same time, you have to learn the lessons that come with that. You know, the best picture I could really draw from the Word of God is look at Gideon. He's the one that started from scratch. You know what I mean? Like, God came to him and did that. He spoke into his life, and then he was like, I want you to do this. And he's like, okay. But he's like, let me make sure. Let me make sure. Like, you know, he was learning to trust that relationship with God. He was learning that, you know. He learned how to listen, you know, because he was in defense mode. He was like, where have you been in all your miracles? Like, you know, I'm like, dude, I can't believe you guys got that, bro. Like, you know what I mean? But what it is, it's an innocent place though. And like you said, like, God saw the heart, you know, God speaking into his heart, speaking into his life. And then God's going to be able to, like, patiently just draw him into that place. By the end of the story of his life, he wasn't even doing that anymore. They tried to make him and his sons kings over the city. And he was like, nah, we're not going to rule over you. God's going to rule over you. That's his response. And that was the man that he was. But he didn't start out that way. So he had to learn some hard lessons, you know? So that's what's really neat. So you kind of, like, I'm starting to see that kind of play out.
All right, well, we are getting the bragging rights back from Tony, because we are at an hour and 20 now. Richard just put his hands up because that was one of the reasons that he got called out when Tony came on, because Tony had a nice long chat on the episode. So, you know, Richard was like,
good episode though, man. It was such a good episode.
Yeah, so Richard was like, I got to get those bragging rights back. So he's like, I know the way to get it. I got to bring Joanna on, and then we'll get there. So before we close, I wanted to give a chance for Joanna. Do you have anything that you'd like to share with our listeners before we sign off? Is any last words, any last something that you just like to share with us before we sign off? All right. Well, she's shaking her head no, so that's totally okay. But just want to say thank you to Richard and Joanna. Thanks for coming back on, and you know, I'm sure we'll have you guys back on again in the future. But just thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. And you know, it's not easy to share about difficult times, but so thank you for being open to sharing some of those things, because you know, I know it's encouraging for me, and it's going to be encouraging to a lot of our listeners, just to see the way that the Lord transforms people, transforms relationships, and that we don't have to give up hope. So thank you.
Man, definitely, man. It's always an honor to be able to be here and to be able to just minister to people, you know, being able to talk to them, and hopefully, you know, the things that we spoke about today, like, you know, give them a starting point if they're struggling with something that, you know, especially in any type of relationship and stuff like that. Like, God sees you, and he sees the situation, you know, and so don't give up hope, you know, just be ready. You know, I think that's the best place to be, you know, so it's good.
All right. And thanks to all the listeners out there. Thanks for sticking with us through this almost hour and a half episode. And until next time, may you experience God's heart for you to flourish in every season.